Hi, my name's host Derek. I'm the host talking with famous people. I am here with famous person, Eccentric M, and we're going to tackle a Quora question. The Quora question asks to list the differences between ENTPs and ENFPs. I'm ENTP, Eccentric M's ENFP. So let's tackle the subject. I said before we started this thing, I was like, "Do you want to take a couple minutes and sort of jot down some ideas and maybe talk about how we want to go about doing this?" It's like, yeah, not really. Why? Huh? What possible reason we want to do that for? Let's just roll. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's just roll. That's fucking the anyway right there. So okay, Eccentric M, what are your thoughts? That's the one way in which we're similar. Okay, there's a similarity to start. What are your thoughts about the differences?
This is an interesting one because I myself had a bit of a struggle thinking, am I an ENTP or an ENFP? Because they have some similarities, especially the NE things. And well, I'm not just going to say that all the letters except for just one. And of course, it's hard to explain because it's similar, but this is really, really hard.
That's why I said we take a couple minutes to prep it up. Okay, well let me ask you. Let me ask you in ways that'll help us to make distinctions. So, first of all, what do you find easier to explain than this sort of thing? Because you're being asked here to distinguish between yourself, whom you know well, and ENTPs, whom you know about. Possibly well, I don't know how well you know about them, but um, what makes this challenging for you?
Probably because it's hard to empathize with not having the same traits that an NTP has in totality. So it's like, well, how do I explain something I don't fully understand, except for just knowing they've got a different function? And, the best thing you can come up with is, well, they're good at maths, possibly.
I'm not good at math.
No.
What just happened there is perfect. What you just said demonstrates the difference in a nutshell, right? The reason you find this difficult to parse is because the question about can somebody explain the differences between these two types, right? The difference between two types, you interpret that to mean the difference between how it feels to be an ENTP and how it feels to be an ENFP. That's why you said the reason it's difficult is because I can't really empathize with you because I don't know what it's like, right? Whereas when I'm asked about this difference thing, I immediately think behaviors, descriptive behaviors. Well, the ENTP behaves like this, the ENFP behaves like that. Or manners of expression that could give as examples. Or analogies like, oh well, ENTP is to the ENFP as the blah is to the blah, something like that. There's lots of different things they possibly do to draw distinctions. The best distinction that can be drawn is the fact that what just happened. That when asked to explain the difference, you want to be able to empathize, to understand the other, so that you can explain how you're different from the other.
Mm.
Do you have any observations regarding possible behavioral differences, though? Like,
only stereotypes, really. They say what ENTPs love to debate because it's to not to cause harm to people or say, oh, I'm going to argue because it annoys you, but it's kind of just works the brain cells and allows them to grow themselves as well. Where the ENFP wants to find out more as well and learn about themselves, but in a less possibly confrontational way. So he might start arguing with people and then think, well, oh, I just hurt the guy's feelings because I just proved him wrong. Oh, we'll just agree to disagree then. Whereas the ENTP is like, well, oh, I've just proven that point. It is the stereotype anyway that you hear a lot.
well, I think it's a stereotype because it's pretty true.
Yeah. And again, I'm being a stereotypical NFP by being careful with my words that I don't mask you as a, oh, I let's debate with people and ruin their day.
Right. I mean, I don't want to ruin anyone's day. But see, here's the thing. Okay, let me help you. This maybe will help you empathize with me about this whole thing. Within the debate community, what do? We have arguments as a sport, right? So you're playing on the field is this, and during the game, sometimes things get a little heated, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. Everybody knows that's fine. And nobody's feelings are hurt after the game. After the round, everyone's cool. After the round, you just finished screaming at each other. You walk out, and the kids are like, giddily chatting with each other, and as it should be. And so too with the coaches and the debaters, and the coaches and the coaches, and it's in our interactions with one another in general. It's not just in debate rounds. We can argue quite heatedly with one another and end it by going either you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong, or well, here's a workaround where we don't have to actually resolve this. But at least we're explicit about it, right? We say, here's a workaround logically, or here's a workaround protocol-wise where we don't have to resolve this fundamental dispute that we can't resolve. But and it allows us both to walk away from the dispute, still maintaining that the other party's wrong. Because when that does happen, that's important too. You have to have that avenue. This is when you get straight up NTs in the mix with each other. This is how NTPs particularly. NTJs are different. But NTPs in the mix, they're very detached from the expression of disagreement or even anger as actually meaning something negative about the person to whom it's expressed. This is kind of weird.
Yeah. The NFP side of things, it's like when we debate, it's not just because we're going into a debating field, as you say, like a game, but it's when you feel passionate about something, I need to put this out there. And it's kind of what moves some of my writing as well. Because sometimes you'll come across comment sections across the internet, and before you know it, you're flooding them because so many people have the same opinion. So I'm thinking, well, it's easy to just write something and then just have it there for people to find. 1 minute.
When he returns, I will ask him about topics. I'll take the chance to notes. See, I started rambling, right? Because I need the notes. He's a little younger. His mind's a little younger than mine, so he doesn't get quite as tangential, probably. I suspect. I don't know for a fact. Topics. I'm talking about writing. Topics. He was saying that.
Right.
All right, so you were just saying that your moral connection to an issue is necessarily comes before your willingness to argue about it.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you to say for the ENFP, what kind of topics they write about. If you can talk about topics you write about.
A lot of things. I mean, I guess things to do with like humanity in general, how people feel, and
things you don't write about. Things you don't write about.
Oh, I don't write about.
That'll be easy. It should be easier.
Well, I don't write about things that are obviously that I don't know anything about, or things to do with politics. My writing seems to be very interpersonal with people, and on my own issues, on certain subjects, to on my passions and interests. as opposed to just writing about things for the sake of just, oh, here's a topic.
Right. Okay. So as far as the topics go, I am quite likely to write about politics. I am fairly likely to write about things I don't know anything about, and pretend like I know things about them. As far as passions, you say interpersonal. I'm guessing you're saying you're writing about the way people deal with each other, or the way
Right.
you'd like them to deal with each other. Do you make a big distinction between normative, prescriptive, descriptive? These are sort of ways that we advocate or position ourselves. Like, you should do this morally is normative. You should do this
Yeah.
because good outcome is prescriptive, like that kind of stuff. Do you
Yeah, I guess so. Um, I've written about things that are, as you say, morally inclined or feeler inclined. It's things like, of that nature. Yeah.
do you have a clearly understood narrative about how you ought to behave in day to day life?
Um, how you ought to behave. That's an interesting one because everyone has a different view on it. Because you could say, well, where did rules come from in the first place? And then it starts bridging out into, well, some people are religious and it's, morality came from a higher source, where some people are like, oh, social construction or control, and it starts bridging out into people's beliefs and ethical backgrounds as
But I'm
well.
asking about you, though.
Right. Um, for me, I guess I was just brought up, as I said before, religiously, so the morals there would have originated from that, of people and things of that nature. So when you see confliction against that, you think, oh, but then of course I ask myself, well, um, is there really any basis for what I'm saying here? So I kind of objectively almost debate my own beliefs in order to have a stronger belief in them as well.
So, would you say your beliefs are basically minimize suffering, or uh,
Yeah, and that in general.
I mean, it's sort of the universal good of
Yeah.
preserve life, minimize suffering. Uh, okay, interesting. Now, what kind of length do you write? Are you writing just articles? Or are you writing novels? Are you writing something in between, essays, or what?
Um, it's mixed. Sometimes it's really short, just like 400 words, where sometimes I can write thousands of words. It depends just how I'm feeling at the time, rather than planning out and thinking I'm going to write an essay or I'm going to write an article. I just when I write, it's like my internal monologue is writing, and then
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
happens,
It's just your
yeah,
internal monologues going down on the paper, except
yeah,
you get to fix little things when you go back
yeah. You need to
later.
fix it, and yeah,
You get to fix it.
and
It's,
make it look
it's,
more less muddled.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's. I always thought that there's no distinction at all between writing and talking,
Mm.
except I could be more careful with the writing. Like if
Um,
I put a period talking there, I'd probably put a comma if I were writing it between before the accept. Anyway,
mm.
uh, so we write about different topics, and also you express a comfort level with doing what you want when you want that kind of impresses me. I'm kind of jealous of it a little bit because I know I struggle with this a lot. I had it indoctrinated into me. Strong work ethic, strong high value placed on completion, a high value
Right.
placed on reliability and achievement and attainment of outcomes and stuff like that. So for me, I I could not help but emerge from my childhood sort of head hung low at being a person of low character who failed to have adequate self discipline.
Right.
Did you experience something like that as an ENFP?
Um, Not personally. I was very, very much the goody two shoes child. I didn't really have a problem with rebelliousness or feeling forced to do things, or anything expected of me. My mom who brought me up, she was very, very, do whatever makes you happy as long as it's not morally wrong. Basically, don't worry about your grades, don't worry about expectations. Just do what makes you happy generally. My mom's an ISFJ as well, um, so yeah. No,
That sounds like my parenting of Delilah. That's how I parented Delilah. But my parents weren't like that. But they were. I mean, they're great parents. I'm not complaining about them. Um, so if raised in the right environment, if raised to prioritize one's own freedom, then you don't have neuroses about it. Is that what you're saying?
hmm, I guess so.
I think that's probably not a difference between ENFPs and ENTPs. I think there's probably a difference between you and me because of how we were raised on that
Right.
vector. So okay, I just like to sort of review the differences we've talked about between ENTPs and ENFPs so far. To sort of try to keep us on track here. We talked about writing topics, and we talked about uh, how there's a moral connection before you're going to advocate for something that the ENTP likes to debate, even if they don't feel any more particular moral connection or need to debate. They're fine to debate anyway, just on the grounds that they spotted an inconsistency. So that sort of willingness to debate as fun versus debate as necessary tool uh, tells us a lot about NE, and it's how much that NE itself is responsible for the fightiness, which is to say, not at all. It doesn't sound like really debate as fun, debate as tool. Okay, so we talked about that. We talked about the moral thing. We talked about the topics. How you don't like to write about politics, and you like to write about things you're passionate about, like interpersonal stuff. And I do like to write about politics. I like to write a lot of I like to write wordy, abstract, parsy, heavy stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I try not to. I try to police myself a bit and
Hmm.
not indulge too much. Okay, so what other differences can we talk about? How about interpersonal relationships? For me, you've also indicated this similar, I think, value, but for me, I very settled. When I get in a relationship, I settle right down, and want to stay in a relationship forever because it's easier than changing, unless it's awful.
Hmm.
What's your experience?
Um, yeah, it's been mixed because experience can kind of change you over time. But I'd say that I kind of, as you say, stick to your relationships unless it's awful. But I've also had problems in the past with even in an awful relationship, you kind of stick with it and find yourself attached to it, despite it being negatively impactful on you. I guess that's the strong FI. Oh, I love this person, despite the logical conclusion of, well, this person is destroying you.
Well, I mean, it's no easier for me. I think it's the possibilities thing. This is why,
Yeah.
because when we look out with our NE from a relationship, we see on the other side fear, uncertainty, and loneliness, and all the things, all the bad stuff. We see all the bad possibilities, and from
Mm.
the inside, we see all the possible ways to solve the problems that exist. Well, we just need to, if from an ENTP's perspective, if I'm having relationship problems, until we've done it for years and years, and I give up on this notion. But until that occurs, I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that one of us must simply be misunderstanding or incorrect about something or failing to account for something, because there has to be some way in which you and I, other person, can reach consensus, which is going to require both parties to sort of give a little. That's probably the other
Yeah.
people don't want to admit they're wrong. That's the
Yeah. There's
issue.
yeah, a lot of misunderstandings with people in general, and there's a lot of pride, isn't there, with everyone really, like. sometimes everyone doesn't want to admit they're wrong, but sometimes you have to kind of sit back, especially with FI, when you can get emotionally involved and you can't see your own faults until you simmer down afterwards. It's like, actually, they were right about that. Because in the heat of the moment, oh, no. But then, oh, maybe they were right. And things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the example of why this possibility focused orientation is beneficial from an ENTP standpoint is that hearing you tonight and talking to you about this stuff has made me really grow in terms of my understanding of where the disruption comes from, which is to say, and additionally, this is going to be a good opportunity for me to demonstrate, like, okay, hey, somebody's pointing out that, I mean, Medicine pointed out, and you've sort of confirmed, I've talked to you about it, that any alone is not functioning in a disruptive fashion. Otherwise, ENFPs would be rebellious, and they're not rebellious. They're
Mm.
they're passionate about causes or whatever project, hobby kind of thing they're doing.
Yeah.
ENTPs are passionate too about their project, hobby things. Like, I'm passionate about this. I'm super passionate about it, and so that is a similarity.
Mm.
Uh, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good point because I didn't really think about that myself until you said, and when people think like that about NE, and I think, well, yeah, it's just a really good point to brought up on it, and it's more knowledge for me as well. Um, yeah, it's interesting that.
So now I'm really struck though. What in my mind, the reason I'm kind of like just sort of dazed here, I'm trying to figure out, and the best candidate at the moment remains, I think, NE and TI combo. But I want to understand a mechanism that fits in with my other parts of my models and stuff that explains where the rebelliousness comes from, the contrariness.
Yeah, right.
Why would NE only become contrary with TI and not with
Mm.
FI?
Maybe the FI is the more as you say, the more part that feels well. Because we discussed earlier the guilt thing and people's feelings and things like that. Um, Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. It's
Um,
because of the. You're right. Okay. So to link back to
right.
that, you're saying because we're using to adjudicate our interpersonal relationships and who's right and wrong in those, and to adjudicate our feelings, to determine our feelings, basically, we're using logic.
Mm.
Because of that, then as a consequence, we're going to be rebellious. But why does that make us rebellious?
Maybe rebellious to certain people, or rebellious to the people who are more prone to using FI. So they think, well, aren't you going to think of that other person's feelings? And
It's not that though. Look, I mean,
no,
ENTPs are rebellious. Like, okay, forget the word rebellious. We are contrary by nature. Early on, ENTPs start this habit thing that we all do. You can spot us. You can spot us in the comments of any fucking blog or whatever. We're the douchebags who are going, that's pretty good. Missed spot there. Yeah, you forgot to count for this, but not bad for an amateur. And then, Bailey, putting douchebag shit like that up. Where are those guys? Why? Why? What makes NE and TI do that if NI by itself doesn't do that and TI by itself doesn't do that?
perhaps it's a sense of superiority because two similar functions are coming together that promote intellect. So it makes someone feel, oh, I've got this superiority of intelligence, so I'm higher than you, kind of a thing going on.
Well, but I think that to the extent that people are genuinely happy with themselves and their intelligence, whatever level it is, they they aren't motivated by feeling good about themselves
Hmm.
to, in fact, if anything, it's a reflex I usually regret, right? It doesn't. It makes me feel giddy in the moment, but then you feel bad. So, and I
Mm,
know this well enough now that I barely do it anymore. I don't chase that high, I guess, you know. But I don't think it
mm.
would work anyway anymore.
Mm.
What kind of comments are
Yeah.
you likely to leave? Do you follow the if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all except if they offend you rule?
It's very that's been a point of confliction for me, really. Because sometimes I think to myself, well, just don't say anything. But sometimes I'm like, well, something has to be said, or else the person will never improve. And
So,
so I'm trying to balance out how I'm going to affect them emotionally at the
what's the
same time what
criterion
needs to
though?
be said.
Okay, but what's the criterion for when that is that does that turn off itself too? On and off, like is it only apply to moral stuff, or would it apply to like a fashion thing? Like somebody has to tell her that that blouse looks awful. With it looks like, that abstract design on her shirt looks like a big cock pointing at her mouth. She doesn't know. She's
Um,
oblivious. Oh my God! Somebody has to tell her. Would you feel obligated to tell her?
that's a really hard one. I'm thinking, should I tell her, should I not? And that's when I have this confliction because in my mind I know what's wrong, and then oh, it's terrible.
Who's gonna tell her?
But
I just love this new top. I tell you, I can just eat it up. Just, oh, shit. He's just making it worse and worse.
yeah,
Um. Okay, so let's see if we have one more. Okay, the ways here's the last difference we'll talk about in this video. There's between ENTPs and ENFPs. How we would each end this video. I'll tell you how I would end it, and then you tell me how you would end. Okay. So I would end this video by saying, "Thanks for watching Talk with Famous People, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese." How would you end this video?
similar. I'd probably say thanks for watching. I hope everyone had a great time and everyone learnt something or was just plainly entertained at least, even if you didn't learn anything new. Yeah, something along those lines.